Hello, this is Kyla from Hidden Gems Literary Emporium, and today we have a very special guest all the way from Australia, the author of Magpies Ruin, which is on display here at Hidden Gems, Mr. Brian M. Cox. Nice. Thank you for being here, Brian.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and just so you all know, Brian and I worked extremely hard to do this. But
Yes. Took a while.
yes, but here we are, and we are super excited about our conversation about Magpies Ruin. So let us begin by you just introducing yourself, telling us your brief synopsis about Magpies Ruin, and I also want you to tell us what inspired you to write this type of story.
Rightio. Well, I'll give you a little bit about what went into how I wrote it first, and then I'll give you a little bit about the book.
Okay.
So, I spent my misspent youth, my teenage years, playing massive amounts of Dungeons and Dragons. I loved reading fantasy novels, sci-fi, the whole works. Just loved reading in general. But out of playing D&D for so long, and either as running characters or running a whole campaign, I keep getting ideas of, creating new dungeons, new campaigns for people, even when I wasn't playing. And over the years, I played with many groups and just continued on the way with it. But more recently, I just haven't had a group to join with. But I still had all these ideas. So I thought, well, I'd always tinkered with the idea of, could I write a book? I love the genre. And I just thought, well, I know my D&D stuff pretty well. I'll use that as a basis. And I expanded upon some ideas I'd had for one campaign and started writing it down, and it wasn't really going anywhere. And then I thought, no, I'll do this. I'll use that as history, and I'll start a totally new idea, a new campaign sort of thing, and I'll use all my backstory as backstory, as history for what I want to write. And then I sat down and I started to write. Now, it took me 1 week to write 30 pages, your typical laptop, A4 page. I read what I'd written and I thought, I'm not sure this is any good. So what I did was I actually downloaded a digital copy and gave it to a friend at work. Now, she had exactly the same taste in literature as I did, same taste in music. It was just uncanny. We just liked the same stuff.
Wow.
And I just said, I'm trying to write something. I want you to have a read of it and tell me whether or not you like it. Is it any good? Should I keep going? Should I just give it away? She got back to me within 2 days and said, don't you dare stop writing.
Really?
So it was just, from that point, it was, okay, I've just got to see where this goes. And I just continued to write.
Wow.
So, her name's Letessa, and I ended up dedicating Magpies Ruin to her, because if she hadn't pushed me, I wouldn't have written any more than that first 30 pages.
Wow.
Now, so that's where it all comes from. So anyone who loves fantasy sort of novels, D&D, even a little bit of sci-fi sort of stuff, they're going to love this book. And it's written for pretty well anyone. You really have to be teenager, 13 or 14 years or older. Some of the language just requires that maturity and a little bit more understanding of English language to get your head around it.
Okay.
So not for the younger age groups, but from 13 or 14 older, not a problem. I have had a 14-year-old girl read it and tell me it was awesome. It was really, really good. I've had an 87-year-old who never read a fantasy novel in her life read it because she bought a copy and read it because I wrote it. She knew me.
Oh, okay.
So that's why she bought a copy to support me in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And she said when she first opened it and started to read it, she thought, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this. It's wasn't her thing." Then she got into it, and she got engrossed, and she finished it. And she finished it, and she came back to me and she said, "I didn't think I was going to like this, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to start reading more fantasy novels."
Wow.
So that was a really big tick for me.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had one single comment from anyone who has read it to say that they hadn't enjoyed it. So it's all been positive commentary, which has been really great.
Mm-hmm.
I had one young guy read the blurb on the back, and he said that reads like a Raymond D. Feist novel.
Wow.
Now that's really big.
Yes, it is.
To sort of say that sounds like this guy's work.
Right.
And that was just wow.
Yeah.
Humongous praise for that. So very grateful for that young guy saying that.
Mm-hmm.
So about the book.
Yes.
Over the history, undead have risen in the lands, and it's taken the combined might of the human, elven, dwarven, halfling races to contain the outbreaks. So there's been small, a few really large outbreaks, and a couple of small outbreaks over, a few hundred, close to 1,000 years sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So at the current time frame, the main character is arriving home with the news that there's another undead outbreak happening.
Right.
One of the northern countries has just been totally eliminated. It's been overrun. So what she wants to do is gather a group together to go in search of the elves and the dwarves because they've gone missing. Humans have lost contact with them.
Mm.
So her prime role, after informing her hometown of the threat and getting them to spread the word to other countries so that they can help, what her main goal is to go and find out if she can find the dwarves and the elves.
Right.
So she sets off on a quest to find them. And then at the end of, if she can find them and get some assistance from them, she then wants to go back into the north where the undead have come from to try and find what has caused this outbreak. Try and stop it for good. Try and stop all these little outbreaks which have happened throughout the centuries and try and put an end to it.
Right.
So that's the premise of Magpies Ruin.
Okay, question. So the main character, her name is Kai.
Correct.
Kai. And you and I were talking about this last night. How it's interesting that my name is Kai Love. And so I'm reading this thinking about myself. And so why did you decide to choose a female as your lead? Because not many books do that, actually.
I didn't really plan on doing that. It's just the way it happened.
Okay.
I could have started off with having Kai being a male, but just the way I wanted things to flow, it didn't really suit how I was writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so very, very early on, it just became, okay, I'm going to make my lead a female.
Right.
Originally, Kai was not the lead main person in the story. It changed. She became the lead.
Okay.
But yeah, it just fitted in so much better.
Okay. Next question. Hold on. Let me pause real quick because I'm getting some feedback. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So, question about your characters, because they all have very unique names. Did you make up the names of the characters? Were they inspired by real names or real people? How did you come up with the names?
Most of the names I just made up straight off the top of my head.
Oh, wow.
I have known someone by the name of Kai before.
Mm-hmm.
That was many years ago, but that was a guy, wasn't, and I hadn't actually thought of him until after I'd started using Kai as the name for the lead character.
Wow.
Alemre Tremelin came straight out of my brain.
Wow.
I was trying to think of names which are a little bit unusual.
Yes.
Frederick. Frederick is actually it's an old name.
Mm-hmm.
It was fairly prominent a good 200, 300, 400 years ago over in England.
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically shortened to Fred and is virtually not used anymore.
Right.
And then Morinel, I made it up. Shadow was just came about from, I'd had an idea of what I wanted to call her. And in the book, she's actually, her actual name is Ovo Yindi. Now that will not be pronounced correctly. I don't know how to pronounce that name.
Wait, did you make that name up?
No.
Oh, okay.
I have a cousin who is working with some Bible translators over in Africa.
Wow.
And there's a point when she is first introduced when she speaks her native language.
Yes, I remember.
So I've written that native language in the book. And her name and that language are the language which my cousin is helping to translate the Bible into.
Wow.
So I actually had to contact him and his wife and ask them if they could supply me with a couple of sentences.
Yeah.
And what could be used as the name if this was what I was wanting as the name sort of thing. How would they say this sort of thing? What would it be? So they sent me back all this, a page or so of different commentary or sentences and different interpretations of what I'd given them. And I got to choose what I wanted to use alongside what its English meaning was. So I just had to copy that directly in.
Wow. That's quite
so
interesting.
Yeah, that was and I put it in as an acknowledgement that the language which she actually speaks in the book is actually a proper language.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I read that, I was wondering, because of course I couldn't pronounce it, but I'm just wondering if it was an actual language or if it was, if you made it up yourself. So that's great to actually know. What about Princess princess. The princess.
Zephranthe.
Yes.
Zephranthe is a plant.
Is it really?
Yes. It's one of my favourite plants. I work in a nursery and I really love this little plant.
No.
Its common name is storm lily. It's just got these delicate green upright leaves.
Wow.
And after rain, 3 days after rain, it flowers.
Wow.
And it's got these beautiful white flowers, lily-type flowers, with a yellow centre.
Wow.
So that's where Zephranthe came from. I just went, well, why not use it as a name? Plant names are used as names for women all the time. So
absolutely.
Something different.
Right. Oh, that's a beautiful name for a person. Yes.
I hope
really
people actually pick it up and use it.
I was just gonna say we might have to use that one day.
Ooh.
Yes.
That would be an honour.
Yeah, and if we do, we'll have to give them the backstory. There's this author, his book was on display, Magpies Ruin, here's the book, because, we have a copy. And, yeah, so that would be really cool. I want to ask you a question about your thought process when you're writing.
Yep.
Okay. Do you just sit down and get it all out? Or do you have a method, like, okay, I'm writing chapter 1, I have an outline, let me bang this out. Chapter 2, or do you just go and flow?
I just go and flow. I just write. When I got to a point where I basically finished or figured I'd got close to finishing Magpies Ruin, I thought, I've got to get this to an editor. I've got to actually get it to look like it's actually written properly.
Right.
I had my English is reasonable. Mm-hmm. Mind you, I barely passed English at high school.
Really?
I've got a. My parents have always said I've always had a really, really good vocabulary. Mm-hmm. Using words which they didn't know I knew, right, and using them in context. Mm-hmm. Even when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Right. Wow.
From a really young age, I was just absorbing words and how they were supposed to be used.
Wow.
So I've got that, but my actual written English isn't real that flash. So when I submitted my book to get edited, there was reasonable punctuation, but there was basically almost no paragraphing. There was no distinct chapters.
Oh wow!
I told them when I submitted, I said, "This is going to require a lot of work. I don't care how long it takes you to actually do it."
Yeah.
And then once they actually put it all into order and everything, then I actually read back through it. And it took me another 6 months after I got my edited copy back of tinkering before I then started looking for a publisher.
Okay. So how long did the entire process take you, from you writing it to you sending it to the editor to you getting it back and rereading it and then sending it to the publisher? How long did that process take?
From first putting basically pen to paper to having a published book, which was the 30th of October last year, it was 6 years.
Wow.
6 years and a couple of months. The first digital file I've got is dated July of 2014. Wow. Now, that wasn't the very first file because between me going backwards and forwards with stuff with Letessa, my friend, I somehow lost my actual very first bit of writing. So that file just somehow got deleted and got totally lost.
Oh wow.
So I don't actually know my exact start date, but it was in 2014.
Wow. They say patience is key.
Yeah, well, it was just I wrote. It was funny. I'd actually wrote what was probably something like chapters 6 through 10 was the first bit I wrote. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have a start. I didn't have an ending. I had just had this little bit of a chunk in the middle.
Oh, okay.
And I kept writing. I kept following on. I didn't keep going back. And then I suddenly went, well, I need a start. How is all this going to start? And then I eventually went back and say, okay, I've got to get to this point. Where am I going to start? And so I wrote the start. Mm-hmm. And I went, right, well, I need an end. How's it going to end? And then I ended up going, okay, well, this is what I want it to do. How am I going to get from this point to that point?
Right.
And then I sort of basically did the from the end battle onwards, and I wrote all that. And then I'd written little bits and pieces which were dotted here and there, but I didn't know where they were going to fit in the entire story. And then I just started slotting them. Oh, I want that in after that, but before that, join that to that, join that to that, and just worked it all together.
I appreciate you sharing that because I feel as though a lot of, especially aspiring writers that we speak to, people who are going to be writing their first book, they put what I think is unnecessary pressure on themselves. And they say, they put so much pressure on themselves to do it in a certain time frame. And so we always kind of just encourage them to just let it flow. And so you sharing that it took you 6 years to write this book, but the product is so amazing. It just shows that you kind of just have to go with the flow. It has to feel right, and then it'll be the outcome that you want.
Yeah, pretty well. And when I sat down to write, mm-hmm. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to write a full book, whether it was going to be any good or not, mm-hmm. or what. So, and I didn't even have the entire storyline. I only had these vague thoughts of, this bit here, that bit there, and a few other things. And I just thought I'd just sit down and try and write something.
Right.
And so that's what I did. I sat down and I tried to write something, and then within the space of a week, I'd written 30 pages and just went, well, I don't know. Is it good? Is it not?
You're right.
Find, who can I ask? Mm-hmm. So it was, okay, I'll go and ask Latessa. And yes, okay. Well, she gave me positive feedback, so it was write some more. And, mm-hmm. and then I'm lucky with my job. I'm working outdoors all the time, but 90% of the time I'm working by myself. And most of what I do doesn't really require a lot of in-depth thought about it. It's sort of, okay, I'm reblocking areas, so I'm moving plants to create more space. So it's just, okay, I'm moving all this from there to there. So while I'm doing that, while I'm physically active doing something, mm-hmm. my brain's free to think about stuff.
Right.
So I actually was doing a lot of my thought processes for writing the book actually out there while I was working.
Right.
And I'd just get ideas and toss ideas backwards and forwards with myself, sort of thing, this way, that way. No, I won't do that. That's a silly idea. Or try this, and then, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And then I'd get home and whatever I'd been thinking about, I'd write up and just blank page, 5 or 6 pages down from where I was writing. I just type in whatever I thought about, and mm-hmm. then I'd go back to read over where I just finished writing before and just continue on, and then I'd go back and go, oh, yeah, that's right, I had this idea, I'll slot that in now, or yeah.
So
And yeah, I'd tell anyone, if you give it a go, try and write.
Yeah.
Just sit down and give it a go. Think about whatever you love doing most and write about that.
It sounds like... Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, in my case, I love fantasy novels. I love playing D&D. I use that as my basis. And I thought, I know this. I know what a good book is.
Right.
I know how to run a D&D campaign. So if I use my D&D campaign knowledge and slot that and write that as a story. This is my background D&D campaign. This is my world. I'll write about that.
Right.
So if your favourite thing is soccer, well, write about a young kid growing up learning to play the game and becoming this superstar or something.
Right. So, and basically, just use what you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, use what you know and what you love, and just feed off of that.
That's it, and put your emotions into it.
Right.
Yeah, I basically use my writing as escape from the world. So while I was sitting there writing and thinking about what I was thinking about my world and whatnot, I was ignoring all the extraneous crap which was going on in my life.
Right.
It was ignore all that, get rid of all the crap which is going on, concentrate on what I'm doing on my little world, and writing about what I wanted to write about, and then using that as an out time, and then you sort of, okay, I'm finished writing, I'll go back to my life,
Right.
sort of thing. And that really worked for me. It was a really big help.
A lot of people, I hear that from a lot of writers, but even more so readers. We always talk about how reading is kind of like not even kind of like, reading is and can be an escape from stress, from just, things you don't want to think about. And you just never really know how your experiences can affect other people once you write them down. And we always talk about how writing, and especially publishing a book, Magpies Ruin is now a part of literary history for now and forever to come. When people have a physical copy of it, it's something that, like for our family, it's on our bookshelf now, but it'll be on our son's bookshelf, maybe in 10 years or so,
Yep.
So it's really important. And it's really important what you did. And it's a really cool story. And I don't want to go too deep into it like I told you yesterday, because I don't want to spoil it for myself, but or for anybody else. But what I do want to do is randomly open to a page and read a paragraph. So I just flipped it open randomly to the first page of chapter 18. And so I'm just going to read a paragraph or two, and then I'm going to have you explain it if you don't mind.
Not a problem.
Okay, so it says, it took 4 weeks of political wrangling, debate, and intimidation before the Privy Council, I loved that name by the way, the Privy Council and the Council of Merchants buckled to the throne. Frederick and Princess Zephranthe, right?
Yep.
Okay, made a formidable team. Between them, they discovered and eliminated each and every threat, turning those responsible into firm believers in the action of the throne or into paupers. The city slowly responded to the firm rule they were being shown. Raelis would receive the full support of the city and whatever aid they needed. The guards were finally removed from their rooms. Now, this sentence just caught my attention. Okay, news from Raelis in Almerek had come through during their stay. The first attack on Almerek had been repulsed, and no further attacks had eventuated. Almerek had been evacuated except for military personnel. The mounted troops sent from Raelis had used Almerek as a base for 3 weeks before the second wave of undead approached. Spoiler, I did it. Then they had ridden out, scattering across the land, trying to entice the undead to move away from Almerek. To a large extent, they were successful. Few undead came upon the city, and for quite a while, the soldiers left in Almerek were able to destroy them with relative ease. I flipped open to a little itty-bitty spoiler, though. But it's okay. Okay, so what's going on here?
Rightio, what's going on there? When Kai and her group got to... the name escapes me. Okay. They always do. Basically, it's Prince Morinel's and Princess of Franthe's grandparents. The king and queen of this other city-state. Now, they're very poor rulers. They basically are living the high style without worrying about the populace whatsoever. They're doing this. They're spending massive amounts of money on rebuilding the town in an extravagant fashion. So all the actual political power in the town has eroded away from the crown to the Privy Council and the Council of Merchants. And the Council of Merchants have basically taken over all the funding, all the monetary power in the town. So in order for... there's political manoeuvring between Morinel's grandparents and the city of Raelis, that they're at odds. So they don't want to actually help the city of Raelis at all. But if everyone isn't involved, it's just going to fail. Right. You know, the trying to stop the undead is just going to fail unless everyone cooperates and gets involved. So, although Kai and her team are in a hurry to get to somewhere, they're forced to deal with the situation where they are, and in so doing, they've got to totally change the entire political structure of that town before they can go. So that's the first part. The second part is just sort of informing people of the undead's back on the move, sort of thing, and what's sort of happening in that area.
Right. Okay, so this undead thing, right? So was that something that you made up, or does that have historical roots somewhere, somehow?
It does have historical roots.
Okay.
There have been outbreaks of undead throughout history.
Really?
Throughout history of Magpies Ruin, there have been outbreaks of undead.
Yes.
So that's where that's all coming from. Now, in D&D, undead are prevalent. It's just they're some of the more common monsters you get. They can be skeletons, zombies, ghouls, ghasts, vampires, all the way up into upper level undead, which I'm not even going to try and pronounce all the names of them.
Okay.
So basically a typical human being could go one-on-one with a skeleton and win 50% of the time.
Okay.
An ordinary human up against a zombie is going to only win about one every 4 fights. So zombies are that much more powerful, sort of thing.
Right.
So this army, and then if you go further up the scales of undead, they're just that much more powerful. So having an army of undead attacking a city, the vast majority of them are skeletons and zombies. So a typical warrior can go toe to toe with a zombie 1-to-1, not a problem. So these are the trained military personnel can one-on-one with the zombies, not really an issue. And skeletons, okay, one warrior up against 2 skeletons is a fair fight.
Okay.
But typical ordinary people, one-on-one with the skeleton, and it's a fair fight.
Right.
So that's just a bit of knowledge about how that sort of works.
Okay.
Now, the greater undead, sort of the vampires and other things up in those upper echelons, they can actually control the undead at the lower levels.
Oh, wow.
And they can control large numbers. So a single vampire could have 30 or 40 zombies and 50-odd skeletons under their control, sort of thing. So to have these absolutely humongous armies of undead, and I mention in the book that this northern country, which has been wiped out, 500,000 men and women have been wiped out. What size force is required to do that?
Right.
In the space of in the 3-week time frame given that's been wiped out, considering there has already been the entire armed forces of that country went up against this horde of undead and has been eliminated, and then the undead came through and wiped out another 500,000 men, women, and children afterwards. So this horde of undead is absolutely ginormous.
Yeah. I'm glad you explained that also, because it kind of when the readers listen to this interview and when they go back and read the book, it gives them a even greater visual of the danger that is afoot in this book.
Yeah, well, 500,000 men, women, and children. Well, that's 500,000.
Yes.
So, how many people live in New York City? It's
about that.
20 odd million or something. So you're talking about 1/40th of the population of New York being wiped out in the space of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's to put it in a sort of a more
absolutely.
More context sort of thing, just might help people to visualise what it is sort of thing. So, yeah.
Speaking of visualization, great segue into my next question. I love that you included this map in the very, very beginning. Did you make this map up?
Yes, that was hand-drawn by me.
Oh, wow.
I loved drawing maps and drawing dungeons when I was doing D&D.
Okay.
If you write a fantasy novel of any sort, you've got to include a map so that people can see where the characters are, where they're going.
Right.
You've got to be able to say, okay, well, where is Raelis on the map?
Yeah.
It's smack bang in the middle.
Right.
It's the center basically of the known world. And it's smack bang in the middle of the map.
Right.
That's where it should be.
Yeah. And it's great to have because as the reader, we can flip back and forth, and as they're traveling and going through this journey, you can really literally see where they are, where they're going, what's happening where. And so I love when, especially fantasy, but just in general when it applies, when the map is right there, it makes it so much more fun for the reader.
So much easier.
Yeah.
I actually saw, I was reading something somewhere,
Okay.
and someone had, in their novel, when they provided a map, when they'd had the book made, they actually had the book attached to the back cover so that it would fold out, so that while you had the book on the table and you were reading it, you could actually have the map visible beside the book.
Oh, wow.
Still there. And I just thought that was a wonderful, wonderful idea.
Right.
Rather than saying to have to stop where you are and go back to the front and go, okay, well, let's look at this map again. Well, they could have the map right beside them and go, oh, yeah, okay, they're there. And they've just gone, they've just followed that road from there to there.
Right.
So maybe in the future I might think of doing something similar.
Yes. And another great segue into my last question. Is this book going to be a standalone, or will you write more books? Will they be related to this journey, or will they be completely different?
I knew this question was coming.
Yes.
I am currently writing another 7 books.
Really? At the same time?
All at the same time.
How is this even possible?
I have 2 prequels.
Wow.
And I have 2 sequels to Magpies Ruin. So in the Magpies Ruin world, that series, there will be 5 books.
Oh, wow.
I have 2 other novels which I'm working on, which are totally standalone.
Wow.
And I have a 3rd book, which it's set in the Magpies Ruin world, but it has no relation to the storyline of Magpies Ruin and the other 4 books which I'm writing in that series.
You have a lot on your hands right now. A lot of great things.
I will admit that since Magpies Ruin was released, I've done very, very little writing because I've been trying to concentrate on getting knowledge that the book is there out into the media. So one of the most recent things is my website for Magpies Ruin has finally come up online.
Excellent.
And the name I chose for that website, and the website is www.briancoxbooks.com.
Okay.
I quite deliberately put an S on the end of the books to encourage me to finish the rest of them.
Wise man.
So yes, so that was a. I had to choose a name. Well, I wanted to use my name, and then it's not just for one book. It's going to be multiple books.
Right.
I'll put down books on it so that I can use the one website
for everything.
For any other books I produce in the future. It'll be a one-stop. If I'm looking for this author, this is where I go.
I love that. And we're going to include that website link in the description of this video. And as well as, well, can we give out your Facebook?
Yeah, you can give out my Facebook.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook, that's fine.
Okay, great. And so we're really happy and excited about having your book here at Hidden Gems. I love that the main character has the same name as me, kind of a little bit. And but besides that, it's just a really cool story. The cover is really, really awesome, and it's formatted really nice. And they say don't judge a book by its cover, and you probably shouldn't, but it is a very attractive looking book. It's formatted very well. It feels, and this is just me speaking as an avid, book person for my entire life, but it feels really nice. It looks really nice. It's one of those books that you don't want to mess up, you know, in your book bag, so you take really good care of it. So I'm looking forward to the rest of your books, and thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, not a problem. I will say on the website there's a contact form, so any questions about the book or anything, all of that stuff comes directly to me, and then I send stuff, whatever I think should go through to Ex Libris, back to Ex Libris.
Okay.
You can order the books directly off the website, that's fine.
Okay.
I am willing, if people want signed copies, they can contact me through the website, through the contact us forms, and I can organise to get a signed copy out to people.
Okay, and people love that. And you can also, for those of you who are in the area, come by Hidden Gems Literary Emporium. We're here at 55B Morris Street in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Or you can give us a call at 609-361-4331, and we'd be happy to ship a copy to your home. Thank you again, Brian, for your time tonight. Well, today for you, tonight for us.
Yeah. One other thing.
Yes, of course.
I do have a request on that website.
Okay.
Anyone who would like to submit artwork based upon my book, I would love to see some.
And that's actually great, because Raymond was passing me a note during this interview, and he wanted me to ask you if you ever thought about doing illustrations or an illustrated copy of this book or any future books.
Yes. The cover isn't what I actually wanted initially.
Oh.
My boss's daughter is a really, really talented artist.
Wow.
I actually asked her if she would be willing to do some artwork for me.
Uh-huh.
And I gave her a list of 6 different things which I was wanting, I would have liked to include it in the book. 6 different scenes. That included the main, the front cover. The only issue was that time frame suddenly became an issue, and she was finishing a final year of high school, and she just ran out of time to be able to do anything whatsoever.
Oh, wow.
So, unfortunately, yeah, I had been wanting her to do some artwork, but I've always said I want. There are some grammatical errors and things which I've found since the book's come out in the book, so I am already thinking that, okay, I will need to put out a second edition, but to fix those errors. But when I do so, I would actually like to include some artwork and have the main cover what I originally intended. But before I can do that, I need to sell a shitload of books so I can pay off what I owe from actually publishing it in the first place.
Right.
And once I can actually get some money coming in, I can then afford to actually pay a proper artist to actually design what I want for the cover.
Right.
Unless someone out there actually does what I'm looking for.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say, maybe there'll be someone out there who loves the book and, would be willing to contribute a beautiful piece of art that you would also enjoy. And you never know. We make a lot of connections through, believe it or not, Facebook groups. And there are a ton of Facebook groups for authors and illustrators, both separately and collectively. So you might, make a post with a little spiel about the book, someone might go to your website, check it out, perhaps buy a copy and say, oh, you know, here's my art. You just never know. Sometimes things just work out like that.
Yep. And if there's anyone out there who listens to this interview and is in the production industry, movies, TV, whatever,
Yes.
and you know someone who knows someone,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to talk to someone about the possibilities of this going movie or TV.
I think it definitely has the...
It's got the capacity for it.
Absolutely.
I have submitted my work to Tailflick, which they provide a gateway for books to be put to be made into movies or TV serials or whatever. So I've got that option sort of sitting there, but it just depends whether they get anyone who comes along and sees it and is interested in it.
Right.
But if anyone else hears about it and would like to have a crack at it, well, I'm certainly willing to discuss options and things. So, yeah.
Okay. And we will definitely, of course, spread the word about that and let people know. We love interviewing all of our authors because it's just so valuable, not only to us, but to the reader. And so, again, thank you so much for your time. And we will definitely stay in touch. We have to, because we've just spent so much time chatting back and forth and talking. And please, everyone who can hear the sound of my voice, go on Brian's website, get your copy of Magpies Ruin. You will definitely not be disappointed. It's such a great read, and it's the type of book where you really don't want to flip through because you don't want to spoil it for yourself. And that's when I flipped open to the passage that I read earlier, it wasn't a huge spoiler. Like, it could have been worse. So I'm grateful for that. But yes, thank you, Brian, for your time. Please have a good rest of your day, and we will talk again very, very soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for Magpies Ruin.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Hi everyone, this is Kyla from Hidden Gems Literary Emporium. On display all the way from Australia, we have Magpies Ruin by Brian Cox. A little bit about this story. The lands have enjoyed years of peace and prosperity and growth. Princess Kai, like Kyla, returns to her home of Raelis after years of self-imposed exile. She brings dire news of a threat rising, one that can destroy all that has been. She discovers Raeli embroiled in political turmoil and unprepared to face the growing danger. Kai begins a quest in search of allies and seeks support from the vanished races and those hidden from sight. Her past is not left behind, and soon Kai realizes that to overcome the present danger, she might have to pay the ultimate price. Are you interested in knowing what happens? It's actually a very good book. Please come by Hidden Gems Literary Emporium at 55B Moore Street from Monday through Thursday from 10 to 3, or give us a call at 609-361-4331 to schedule a virtual appointment or to have a copy of Magpies Ruin sent to your home. We love you for reading.